What is happening, investors? It is your boy Jack. I am not a financial advisor. Look, I got the clothing line to prove that fact. And today we have a very special video. We have the president of Arrival on to give us a juicy interview. It's about 25 minutes long. Loads of juicy information coming out of this bad boy. I'm not going to waste any of your time, but please, could I ask you to hit that juicy like button if you want me to try keep getting, the executives from these companies that we speak about on the channel on for interviews. Drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of the interview once you've watched it. And please, my friend, if you are new around here, hit that juicy red subscribe button. We bring you content like this. Also, if you are interested, hit that first link in the description. Sign up to my private Patreon group. You get full access to my private Discord. You get my buy and sell alerts, access to over 40 private chats. You would have known this video was coming ahead of time. And if you want 4 free stocks, hit the second link in the description. Sign up to Webull. Deposit $100. 4 free stocks valued up to $1,600. That's juicy. Now, guys, straight into the video. What is happening, investors? Today we have another special guest live from an Arrival bus by the looks of it. We have a man named Avinash. Would you care to introduce yourself? Let us know why you're on the channel today.
Hi everyone, I'm Avinash. I'm the president of Arrival, and I'm here to chat with you about what we've just recently announced and a little bit more about the company.
Awesome, that's exciting. And I suppose just before we get into some of the more juicy stuff, how did you become president at Arrival? What kind of brought you here?
Yeah, so I've got a background in mechatronics and computer science engineering. So I started out as an engineer. I was actually born in the UK, but studied in Australia. And started there they had a new innovation group, General Motors. So I started at General Motors and had an innovation group there that was really focused on, future technologies. So I was working as an engineer there. Left GM to start my own company. So I started a chocolate company, which is another story in and of itself.
Yeah.
And then started a digital health company. And that was, 10 years ago now, and I think it was before even digital health was even a thing. So it was all about using technology to make healthcare, better experience for doctors and patients. And then I moved to Silicon Valley. I got the opportunity to move to Silicon Valley, which for
awesome.
a person like myself, really focused on innovation and disruption. It was like a dream come true. So moved out there and was part of GM's advanced technology office out there. And then I met with the Cruise team and actually led the acquisition of Cruise for General Motors, just sort of recognizing where the future of the automotive industry was ultimately going to head. And then, so I think for a lot of that time, I've been, focused on doing startups, gives you a lot of on-the-ground experience, and then sort of coupled with an engineering background, but also really trying to pick out where things are going, awesome. Which I've had a little bit of a knack for. So I met Dennis, the founder and CEO of Arrival, at a conference actually. Okay. And, when he was first telling me about what Arrival was doing, I was just blown away. And at Cruise, I was leading strategy and M&A. So I actually ended up, after acquiring Cruise, I joined Cruise and in San Francisco. And I'd never heard of this company. And I've, had a startup book of thousands of companies that we were looking at and never heard of Arrival. I'm like, what am I missing here, right? And it just sounded incredible. So when I flew over a couple of years ago, and when I met the team, the team were incredible. And when I saw the products themselves, in real prototype phase and being driven around, and I saw the microfactory, the R&D version of the microfactory, I was like, I've just got to be part of this. So packed up and moved from sunny California to sunny-ish London, and then joined as the chief strategy officer, and then most recently became the president.
That's awesome. That's a cool story, man. That's a very cool story. Engineering, chocolate, the UK, Silicon Valley. That's awesome. All right, cool. So we know a little bit about you. Now let's try and get some insight on the company for the people. So obviously, congrats on everything that's happened. I think it's been very well received. The fact you guys are going public. So we'll start right there. And when the merger goes through, it's going to provide the company with approximately $660 million cash. Obviously, everybody wants to know where do we plan on that cash going over the next 12 months or so, because we're still not technically completely pre-production, but there's a lot to come next year.
Right. So I'll start with just a little bit on the microfactory that we've developed, and I'll take you through all the technologies. But the microfactory in particular, when we looked at some of the key barriers to entry and some of the issues in the traditional method of doing it. Manufacturing and this requirement for really high capex and the need to produce hundreds of thousands of vehicles before you generate any profitability, that really stuck out as something that we really wanted to reinvent.
Cool.
So, we're vertically integrated. So we've got over 1,300 people now, and we spent 90% are engineers. We spend a bulk of effort on how do you design and engineer a vehicle to be assembled using a microfactory. Now, the important things about that microfactory is they're 50 million in capex, and they're around 20,000 square meters. So a lot of what we're doing here with the proceeds is actually the scale and rollout of those microfactories.
Awesome.
So to your point, we've been prototyping the vehicles. We've announced the bus and the van, and through the in latest investor deck, you'll see there's a small vehicle platform as well. They're all designed for this microfactory. But the prototypes, they're quite advanced. We've been driving them around the UK, both the bus and the van. And so we're at the stage now where, we want to use this capital to really scale and grow. So we've got a microfactory in Bicester. We have another one that we announced in South Carolina. So they'll get commissioned, and we'll be launching a few other microfactories over the next few years as we roll out production.
Very cool. So you've spent all of this time creating the perfect concept, the perfect vehicles, and now we get that cash, we get the microfactories. Happy days for everybody.
Well, what's interesting is that we, instead of needing to raise billions of dollars and to deploy one factory, the proceeds we've got lets us deploy quite a few microfactories, place them near areas of demand, and then produce the vehicles for the city. So, for example, South Carolina, as I mentioned, but you can imagine that these factories can pop up anywhere. They're warehouses that we can convert.
That's the next thing I was going to ask. Since we're speaking about microfactories now, is how are you going to decide where to build them? Is it going to be off of demand? Is it going to be, if there's suppliers nearby? I assume it's going to be relatively easy to pick the places, but what goes into that?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, in terms of the ease of it, any warehouse, we can take a warehouse, convert it into a production facility. How we decide where those are, I think a combination of the factors that you mentioned. So one is, areas of demand. But if you really look at it, our van factory, for example, microfactory does 10,000 vans per year. Yep. Now, any city with around 1 million or more is going to have the demand for 10,000 delivery vans, especially what we're seeing with the growth of e-commerce. Yep. Our bus plant does 1,000 buses per annum. So really, it's about placing it near local area demand. In terms of supply chain, it's when we speak a little bit more about the composite materials and really unique IP and things we're doing there, you'll see that the way we do the components and the composites, the supply chain, we can bring that in, to wherever we are. Okay. And then in case of the bus, there's a lot of governments that are already announcing the need to go to fully electric for public transportation, which we think is critically important. And then when you combine the fact that you're bringing local jobs, paying local taxes, and it's a decentralized model, it's really just about, eventually I imagine we're going to see these everywhere. And for the first few years, we're placing them, close to our customers. Yeah,
cool. That makes a lot of sense. So the main thing is just get closest to where the demand is. The supply chain's quite easy for you guys since there's so much vertical integration as well, I suppose. And sure, I suppose while we're on that kind of topic, could we get some more information on, say, some of the IP that you guys have? And some of the house plug and play components in your hardware. That was some stuff that it caught my eye. I wanted to try and get some more info in regards to that.
I can't go too much into the patents, obviously, but I can tell you about the technologies.
Cool.
So as I mentioned earlier, over 1,300 people at Arrival, 90% are engineers. Within that, half are actually software based, and the other half are a combination of like automotive and robotics. Okay. And if you look at our technology landscape, we've designed and developed all of our own components. Now, these are high voltage and low voltage components, but what's important about them is these components are designed to be plug and play. Okay. So our battery module, human machine interface module, compute model for autonomous, and on and on. So what's important about that is we share it across the bus and the van. The small vehicle platform also uses the same components. You can take them out and swap them in with a new one. And so what that means is, we've got a software layer that's plug and play. Think of it like a desktop computer. You just, you plug in a bit of tech and it works, a bit of hardware. So for us, when you think about like the future of autonomous, right now there's no road going autonomy. But you want to, if you're a customer, like for example, UPS, or even an SME, you want to be able to purchase a vehicle that can upgrade. Because right now it's kind of this sell and forget model. You know, the vehicle just, you're stuck with it. So for us, it was important to create a lot of IP around, okay, how do you create these components in a way that they can, you know, drop in and drop out? Okay. And so when autonomous comes along, you can just change some of the components and you've got an autonomous vehicle. It's really impressive and game-changing approach. And then, you know, the other reason we do the components is we can control the cost, and we designed those for the assembly in the microfactory. And that lets us bring the price down. Because what's critical here is that our vans, our electric vans and buses are similar price, and in some case cheaper in the case of the bus than their fossil fuel equivalents. Okay. So that's the components, we control those. Then we have the composite material. So this is a polypropylene based, readily available material, comes to arrival as a fabric. Okay. And we are able to, using our own unique process, turn those into really durable, lightweight panels that are actually cheaper than steel. So, you know, they're more durable than steel and they're cheaper. So if you think about the focus on commercial vehicles, a lot of the accidents happen, you know, what you call like the car park accidents, low speed, you know, those sorts of bumps and stuff. And when an arrival vehicle is hit by something like that, compared to a steel panel, which you'd have to replace, in an arrival vehicle, you don't actually have to replace the panels. Okay. And we don't paint them. The fabric, we can actually put the color into the actual fabric, so the actual panel comes out in the color of whatever vehicle it is. So that's important because you don't get scratches on it. You don't have to rebuff it with paint, which is just, again, with the focus on commercial, we're optimizing their operations as well. So they don't have to paint it. You know, even if they do change the panel, it's cheaper. So there's a whole range of, unique technology to arrival there. On the software side, as I mentioned, we've got sort of 3 layers, actually. We've got the control level, which enables the components to plug and play. We have the data level, which is all of the components. We consider our vehicles devices on wheels, which means, you know, all of these are connected. And then on the 3rd layer, we've got all the customer-facing software tools. So, for example, fleet management tools, vehicle health monitoring. We spend time there. And then we've got the microfactory. And as you can imagine, when you take, you know, the Henry Ford process, which has worked, right? And you're transforming it for the new generation, we've moved from a assembly line to a cell-based assembly approach. What's cool about that is each cell performs a certain operation, right? So you might have a cell that does, you know, bonding or male-female inserts, etc. We don't use welding. That's a critical point. Okay. And with the composites, I should have mentioned, we don't need a metal stamping plant. We don't need a paint shop. And that significantly reduces both the CapEx and the footprint of a factory. These are hundreds of millions of dollars of spends that we don't have to do. And so with all of that, you're shrinking this factory down significantly. And in the cells, you know, we produce the vans out of there, but there's nothing that stops us. You know, typical line, every time you do a new vehicle program, you invest in another line, right? Or you upgrade it to do the new program. For us, we simply, with all the cells laid out in a factory, we simply change the way the coordination of which cell the product goes to. So you can build multiple different products from the same microfactory, which is, as you can imagine, some pretty unique innovations we've got there.
Definitely. I think that's why the microfactory is an absolute core part of the business, and that's why it works so much better than it. Even if you had a bigger factory, it wouldn't work as efficiently as this microfactory.
Yeah, so if you just did the raw numbers, 10,000 vans at around 50 million capex, and you take a typical, commercial vehicle factory producing 100,000 units, say, right? Yeah. We've got an example as well you may have seen. When you just do the math, you're going to be about half the price. You're going to be about less than a tenth of the footprint, and we can commission these factories in 6 months. I mean, this is really some next level stuff that we're doing. So it means that you can just essentially say, okay, we know there's demand there, and we can go out after it. Yeah. But it's also important because, I mean, I'm sure you're aware, the automotive industry, because of the need to produce 100,000 vehicles to be profitable, that economies of scale is actually can work against you, because if the need for a different vehicle arises and you're not ready for it, and you need to spend 4 to 5 years to build the new vehicle program, billions of dollars potentially in capex, you're always in a difficult sort of strategic decision. Whereas for Arrival, we can be flexible. We can change what the factory does. We can repackage the components and the materials into a new product, and we can produce from it.
That's excellent. It just works so well together. I think so many upgradable services being offered is something that we're seeing become more and more necessary in the world of EV in general. So I mean, you guys can upgrade anything at the snap of our fingers, essentially, with this. That's
hopefully
awesome.
at some point.
Yeah.
But right now, though, we're focused on getting the bus and the van out the door.
Yeah.
That's the part.
100%. And I suppose, speaking about that, what a lot of people see, the first thing a lot of people will get excited about, the 10,000 pre-order from the UPS and the potential for 10,000 more, obviously. When are we expecting to start this, essentially? I know we have guidelines for the actual van deliveries, but when is the UPS contract essentially going to begin?
Yeah, so what's really interesting, this is a signed up commercial agreement with UPS. They've been with us actually since 2016, actually. Yep. So they've been trialing our components in vehicles. We've got prototype vehicles that are going to them early in the new year. They'll be doing depot operations as well.
Okay.
So, we're quite along the way in our relationship with UPS, and they've been phenomenal. So, they're, because of our unique sort of flexible approach, they're actually able to come in and work with our engineers to really customize the vehicle for their needs. So we're right in the middle of that. The van, will be going through its regulatory requirements next year, and started productions in 2022. So, it's really not that far away. These vans will be out there pretty soon.
Will UPS essentially be, the first big, customer?
They're the first ones we've announced. I think what's important is that, if you're a fleet operator and you're thinking of what's your next vehicle purchase, right? More than likely, it's going to be a green vehicle, whether you're an SME or, you're a large fleet. And you've got a few decisions to make. One is, what's the upfront cost? And then 2 is, what's the cost to run it over time, right? And then 3, what do you do at the end of the vehicle's life, right? And so with a rival vehicle, up front, the idea here is we're price competitive with diesel. So you're not making any compromise. You can pick the diesel vehicle or fossil fueled one, but you can get an electric vehicle at a very similar price point. Then when you add the fact that the way we do the battery modules, for example, I was mentioning the flexible components, you'll see that, we specify a range for our vehicles. So what we're able to do is just literally add more batteries depending on the requirement of the fleet. So if you've got a fleet that is doing, 100 kilometers a day, why should you wear the cost of buying a vehicle that does 300 kilometers a day? Because the battery is the single most expensive part of the vehicle, right now. So you can actually size the capacity according to your need and change the composition based on that. And then, when you look at the total cost of ownership, I mentioned the materials, it's reduced the TCO, but also when you look at the composition of your fleet, we have a 4-ton van. We have a 2-ton payload. I mean, it's really quite incredible. And then we've got significant cargo volume efficiency as well within our van. You may have seen some of the comparisons, but what that basically means is, for the same price, you can get a cheaper to run vehicle, but you can carry more heavier payload and more packages in the same van. So now the idea here is this shift to going green is at an inflection point because the product is actually better and it's at a similar price point. So what we're seeing, and you'll see more, I think, in the coming months and quarters, but UPS is the like you mentioned, is really a key part of our rollout plan. But as you can imagine, there's significant interest from multiple, both large fleets and small fleets for the van product.
That's only one micro factory anyway. That's how, you know what I mean? Forget about
that. That's the first 10,000, right?
Yeah, that's just a little one. That's a small player. Oh, that's very interesting. That's cool. And obviously, you're in London at the moment. I'm somewhat interested. Is the company more focused on expanding in the US or the UK/Europe, or is it just wherever they're going to see the most benefit?
That's a great question. So if you look at what's happening, we probably should tackle them separately, but they have the same sort of trends, right? Public transportation and e-mobility. Both are moving green, and it's a combination of public policy, but also the requirements for companies to want to be more green, right? In terms of the ESG, etc. And what we're seeing there is that's not limited to any one country or region. And what's really important, even from a personal perspective, is that when we make this shift to being electric, these vehicles aren't priced in a certain way that it basically prices out any particular region or country or company, right? Because then all we're going to do is make sort of we're going to exacerbate a problem of, some folks can go green, some folks can't because of the cost. So we need to remove the cost, because when you remove that cost problem, then you've hit an inflection point for adoption. And that's really critical. And we believe that, we're basically at that point now with the Arrival products. And so when we look at that first rollout, it is initially the US and UK, Europe. And that's predominantly because of the customers that we've announced with. But as you can imagine, with the ability to roll out these microfactories quickly and cheaply anywhere in the world, you then start to really branch out the total addressable market you can really go after. And so it's a win-win on that front.
Yeah, that makes sense. So short term, obviously at this stage of the life cycle, go where the big customers are, but then the ultimate goal is end up everywhere pretty much.
Exactly, because the majority of the van market in particular are actually small, medium enterprises. So it's really important to understand their needs and help them shift over to electric.
That's excellent. And I think a lot of my audience in particular, we focus on the van because there's a lot of vans out there right now in the EV space. One thing I'd like to ask about is the bus. I know there's not quite as much information out there. Is there any customers that you guys are in talks with that you can speak of in regards to that bus that we can know about?
I can't mention them other than the LOI we've got. A few LOIs, but all I'll say is you can imagine. First, let's talk about the sales cycle, because it's different, right? Okay. The van sales cycle is you're talking to the customers, direct sale. When you're looking at the bus, majority of the time they go through a trial. Okay. So what you'll see into next year is Arrival buses that I can mention. Arrival buses will be going into trials, and start of production obviously is in late 21 as well. So what you'll see is we're going to be, the bus is already, as I mentioned, it's in real deep testing and prototyping right now. They'll move into trials with bus operators, both here and obviously in the US and Europe. And what you'll see from there is the transition across to actually changing the fleet over to Arrival buses. So the bus is an incredible product. I mean, it's 8 tons gross unladen weight with an 8-ton payload. I mean, it is really lightweight, so which means it's really range efficient. Yeah. That's what we get from some of the composite materials, etc., that we're doing. Okay. A lot of innovation in terms of the seating for COVID. They can come in and out, but that real focus is that early part of the sales cycle and running them in the trials.
That's awesome. Okay, that's cool. And I know we're on a bit of a time crunch, so I'm going to ask you one more question, and I'm going to start asking people more often. What do you think the biggest obstacle you're going to have to come over in the next 12 months or so will be?
Yeah, so we're really heavily focused. Like we've obviously we made this announcement, right? But at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is the core principles that got us to where we are in the first place. That's the team, that's the culture, that's developing the technologies and staying focused on that, and then getting the products out into production through the microfactories, next year into 2022. Yeah. Now the technology is mature, which is why we are, announcing that we're starting production next year and into 2022. Yeah. But the biggest obstacle is going to be in a COVID environment. We've got we're vertically integrated, but supply chain still plays a role in this. And the question is going to be, how do we make sure that we continue to be able to produce at the volumes that that we've got interest at continuously over the next sort of 12 to 18 months. I think the good news about that is that we've worked in this environment now for a while, and I think even supply chain, ourselves, partners, customers, everyone's understood how to operate in this. But that's the one thing. And then the reality is production's tough, right? I've been there before in a few different industries.
Chocolates.
Producing anything is tough, even chocolate, even producing chocolate. Yeah. So I've got war stories about being in the kitchen myself, just making chocolate because some little thing. Yeah, exactly, literally eating some, but making some too. But So then what we're really planning on doing is making sure, we've got to start a production for Q4, for example, for the bus, but operations actually start in Q2.
Okay.
And this is really important. We know that, that's going to be a difficult time, right, at the start of production. So we are actually, commissioning the factory earlier and running the actual operations earlier, knowing that, as always, as whenever you produce anything, that's a tough thing to go through.
Okay, cool. So just executing simple, like just doing what's said.
Focus on the core things.
Yeah,
and execute.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's fantastic, Anish. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm sure the people are going to appreciate all of the information. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You get back to all of your work.